Hello everybody, Zach Couples, physical therapist here, and folks, I've been seeing a wave of peeps, and I'm even guilty of this as well, with neck positions when they're lifting that I think are a little sus, as the kids say. And I'm going to eliminate the confusion once and for all in terms of what position your neck should be in when you're performing various lifts. And most of the lifts that I'm referring to, folks, are going to be a lot of your bilateral lifts, like squats, deadlifts, things where you're a little bit more stationary. Sporting activities, neck positioning can be much more variable. But when we're utilizing a fixed amount of movement where we need to try to maintain the spine within a certain range of motion, it becomes that much more critical. And I think, folks, that neck position is much more undervalued than you think. And the reason why is because the position that your neck is in is going to influence what is going on throughout the rest of the spine. You see, when the spine moves, it acts kind of like a wave. So if I'm moving a distal area, it's going to cause a movement in something a little bit higher up, and vice versa. For example, when we're talking about neck rotation alone, a lot of the cervical muscles attach into the thoracic spine. Think your splenius, capitis, and cervicis. You turning your head to the left or to the right will create motion all the way down to T5. And if you look at some of the neurodynamic literature, you can also get an appreciation for how me moving one area can affect a distant area to a significant degree. Still don't believe me? Let's run a little quick experiment, shall we? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and bring your chin to your chest, but you're going to do it in two different postures. The first posture I want you to bring it into is I want you to go ahead and you're going to just sit nice, arched and perched, like, you know, Mom would always tell you to sit nice in an upright posture. Mom was wrong though. So you're going to maintain this posture. Try to bring your chin down to your chest and just notice how that feels. In me, you're going to be able to see it, but I can't get there. Conversely, what I want you to do is slouch now, or think about rocking your hips back so your weight's more on your butt bones. And then try the same thing. In my case, I was able to get my chin to my chest when I sat in a more posteriorly tilted position, or where my weight was more on my hip bones or my ischial tuberosities. Conversely, when you boy arched, I can't get there. So you can see how me moving my pelvis and lumbar spine influenced what was crack-a-lacking at my neck. I would argue that if I did the same thing at my neck, I would probably get some influences down in the lumbar spine. So when it comes to lifting, that could influence the directionality that our bodies move when we lift. It could influence where we're loading certain things versus not. Many things that could have an impact on our exercise performance. So then what position should I have my neck in? I'm glad you asked. You want your neck to be in a position that promotes two things. One, an ideal amount of intrathoracic and intra-abdominal pressure that's going to allow us to move the weight that we're trying to move effectively, keep the structures of the spine safe and sound. And then the second thing that we want to encourage is a neck position that's going to promote an adequate amount of range of motion to where we're not overloading any specific structures. What position is that? Well, it's something in the middle of all of the extremes. I don't want something where I'm getting a whole lot of cervical flexion, because if I'm getting a lot of cervical flexion, chances are I'm going to get a lot of lumbar spine flexion as well. Those movements are going to be more paired together. And as I had mentioned previously, folks, when I get motion in my neck, there's a good chance I'm going to get movement all the way down to about T5. So if I'm getting a crazy amount of flexion through my neck as I'm performing a lift, I'm probably going to get flexion through the thorax a significant degree. That might influence intrathoracic pressure, which is going to have a concomitant influence on the intra-abdominal pressure that I create. Conversely, if you're that type of person who looks up, you're going to have the reverse effect. So you know I'm talking about when you're doing the deadlift or the squat and you're looking straight ahead at all times. Well, What that's gonna do is that's gonna promote a lot of extension through the spine. That's gonna limit motion because when you extend, it takes away rotational elements. You might think that's a good thing, but there is some rotational components that occur with just about any motion. And so I have to be able to rotate to some degree in order to get into the positions that I want. If you want to run another experiment, you can try to arch your back as hard as you can and see what your squat depth looks like when you do it. It's not going to be very far. Also too, since I'm getting motion, again, at least down to T5 when I extend my neck, you're probably going to get upper thorax extension. This could influence lower rib cage positioning, which when I have that big arch, that's going to push the abdominal contents more forward. This is a bit of an undesirable thing from an intra-abdominal pressure standpoint because then the pressure is increased more focally on the spine. You can't recruit them phenomenal abdominals as well, and it's probably going to limit your gains. Or maybe you're one of those peeps who's a big fan of hashtag pack in the neck. Well, your boy Big Z is not a big fan of that, and for good reason. Remember, our goal when we're lifting is we want to maximize intrathoracic and intra-abdominal pressure. One, and then the second thing is we want to allow an adequate amount of motion so we can complete the lift. Well, when I pack the neck and retract my head, what that does is that reduces the dimensions of the airway. If the airway dimensions are reduced, guess what, folks? You can't take in as much air. If you can't take in as much air, you're going to have an alteration in the amount of intrathoracic and intra-abdominal pressure that is created. That's going to be cramping your ability to lift safely and to perform at a high level. What's more is when I pack the neck, I lose my rotational abilities. So neck packing is going to negatively impact the amount of motion that's going to be available at the spine. That could negatively influence the degree or ranges of motion that we lift in. And so we want to try to avoid a position like that as well. Well, crap, Zach, you told me I couldn't look down. You told me I couldn't look up. You told me I can't pack the neck. Where in the heck am I supposed to put my neck? Did you ever think about that one song? Why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm talking the middle of all of those positions. So instead of extreme flexion, extreme extension, packing a neck, I want the middle point between all those. I don't want to say neutral in this situation because it's not really something that we can adequately measure. But the positioning that I look for when it comes to most lifts is I want to have slight upper cervical or OA extension. And then if I'm getting OA extension, I'm going to get a small amount of lower cervical flexion. So you want the head tipping up slightly, and when that happens, the lower portion of the neck is going to be tipping slightly down, like so. If I can keep that position, that seems to give me the best of both worlds, where I have an adequate amount of movement available in my neck, which is going to translate all the way down through the spine, and it keeps the airway open enough so I can pull in enough air that it's going to allow me to maximize my intrathoracic and intra-abdominal pressure so I can lift big old weights. Well, that sounds all well and good, Z-Daddy, but what coaching cues do I have to think about in order to know I'm keeping my head where I need it while I'm lifting? Well, in order to determine that, folks, we're going to have to go to the gym. So why don't you go ahead, follow me to Elevate Sports Performance and Healthcare, and if you're in Las Vegas, go ahead and check me out there, and I'll go ahead and show you what that neck position is all about. You're just gonna stay there? No, I mean, come with me. Cool, Zach. I get why the neck needs to follow the rest of the spine when I'm moving under load, and we don't want a crazy arch or be crazy tuck or to really pack the neck, nothing like that. But what does that practically look like? Well, I'm gonna show you that next. And it starts somewhere lower than you'd think. How low am I talking? I'm talking lower rib cage low, because a lot of the positions that we put our neck in when we're doing various lifts can be magnified by a loss of lower rib cage positioning when you lift. Meaning, if I'm someone who has a tendency to look up as I'm, let's say, doing a kettlebell RDL, what the hell, like that, that's because I'm creating an arch in my back and the rib cage is being thrown more forward. So like if I do that same positioning in standing, and I look up like that, oftentimes the rib cage is shifting a bit more forward. And that's going to limit how well we can load the hips, because we have to be able to shift backwards to load the hips. Conversely, if I'm someone who tends to look too far down, well, what often happens in that case is the thorax orients anteriorly as a unit like so. And then you're the type of person who gets a little too rounded on your lifts. Neither of those are desirable, and worse yet is the person who packs the neck. When I do this, then there's not really any rotation allowed in the spine whatsoever. Instead, we want somewhere in the middle. We want the spine to move as one unit, and the way we're going to do that is by first getting a good lower rib cage position. So what I want by that, again, if I'm using the kettlebell RDL what the hell as my movement, I want to start with a nice, long, slow exhale, like that. And you want to think about the ab wall getting smaller and the lower rib cage getting smaller all at once. This is going to allow me to get a good lower rib cage position, so then I can kind of have better control of my neck, and I don't have lower parts of my body influencing the upper parts of my body. What you don't want to do on this is really brace. You don't want to crunch like this to try to force the lower ribs down. You don't want to do a draw-in. Good Lord, don't do a draw-in. You want a nice soft exhale at the start. You're going to feel some ab tension. Try to maintain that. And then from here, what you want to do is you just want to keep your head in line with the rest of your body. So think about everything moving as one unit, like so. Just like that. Now you might be thinking, Zach, you make that lower rib cage coaching stuff seem so easy, but I'm having a hard time applying that in all the moves that I utilize in the gym, and I don't even know the best way to coach an exhale. Do you have a solution for me? I do, and that solution, folks, is attending my seminar, Human Matrix. Because at this seminar, folks, you're going to learn how the dynamics of the lower rib cage influence a wide variety of motions, how you can assess to see when someone has some movement deficiencies there that maybe prevent them from going overhead, or why their deadlifts don't look that great, or why they can't squat so low. And we will go through practical ways to coach a lot of the movements needed to maximize someone's range of motion dynamics and be able to apply these concepts in the gym so they can reach all of their movement, rehab, and fitness goals. If this sounds interesting to you, then definitely check me out at zachcouples.com/seminars. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link is in the description below to the seminars that are going to be available in 2022. Now that we have the lower rib cage position, you might be thinking, well, Zach, okay, I have that, but it is a bit difficult to know where I should be placing my neck. And a lot of times what I'll do to ensure we get good neck position during lifts is I will coach that through the eyes. Meaning any minor adjustments that I need to make in someone's head position can often be corrected by the eyes, especially if you got lower rib cage taken care of. The easiest way to fix the eye positioning is to just give someone a frame of reference of where to look. Now, I used to coach things a bit closer, maybe about 5 feet away, or I'd even put an object, like if I use the kettlebell as my reference point and I'm doing the lift, I might be looking there. But what I've found over time is when people do that, they end up overflexing the neck, right? And that was a useful tactic to correct the person who does this. But since I've been emphasizing lower rib cage positioning that much more, I find that the looking straight ahead is much less common. So what I would actually encourage you to do is after you get the exhale and you keep lower rib cage positioning the way we want, is instead of looking at about 3 to 5 feet ahead, I would be looking about 10 feet ahead. And so the positioning and cue that I use is you get your exhale, you're looking straight ahead, and then as you move down, you want to look about 10 feet away. And so you want to maintain neck position but have the eyes look slightly up as you tip down, like so. So I'm looking eyes up, just like that, and then I'm looking straight ahead. Eyes look up about 10 feet away, straight ahead. And a lot of times just making that minor tweak in terms of where your eye placement is can correct most issues. You can also use the eyes to correct someone whose putting their head in a very funky position. If I have someone who, let's say I do the lower rib cage, but they're still looking up too much, well then you might just cue the eyes down. Or I'll just cue chin slightly down. What you have to watch with the chin being slightly down is you don't want the person to overcorrect and do the double chin. If you get someone who does the double chin, then I just tell them to untuck their chin or undouble chin themselves, go back to the 10 feet look. If you have someone who's getting a little too flexed, simply cueing the eyes to drift up slightly to that 10-foot marker corrects that more often than not. And those would be the major coaching cues that I would utilize to encourage good neck position when you're performing various lifts. And there you have it, folks. Now you got the biomechanics behind why I coach neck positioning the way I do during lifts and how you can maximize your ability to coach neck position in the weight room so your neck is safe while you lift, you're going to get more out of your lifts, and no one will mess with you or your supreme clientele. If you want to learn more, go ahead and check me out at zachcouples.com. And while you're here, folks, so we can help the fam keep growing, hit the like and subscribe button. Why don't you comment below as well if you've had some other useful tactics to getting good neck position, or there's other things that maybe you struggle with when you're coaching your supreme clientele. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. You've been an incredible, outstanding audience, and I hope that you keep it real but not to the extent where things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.